Welcome to The Explainer. Here we dig into complex sources and lay them out for you nice and clear. All right, today we're diving into a source that presents a really provocative, alternative take on Indian history. It all starts with this one big idea, that many of the heroes you learned about in school were actually villains. And some of the villains, well, they might just be the real heroes. The whole argument is that history as we know it has been flipped on its head, and that it was done on purpose.
So here's how we're going to break this down. We'll look at the idea of a contested history, then dive into India's so-called lost golden age. After that, we'll re-examine Mother Teresa's mission, take a look at the politics of the Nehru-Gandhi dynasty, and wrap up with how this source completely recasts India's heroes and villains. Let's get into it.
So the whole argument from this source kicks off with a really powerful claim. It says that the history taught in India today isn't some neutral telling of facts. Nope, it was actually designed from the ground up to create a kind of subservient mentality. And the reason for this, according to the source, is that the true history of India's culture, wealth, and heroes was deliberately suppressed. The thinking was, if people really knew about their amazing heritage, a history of incredible wealth and self-respect, well, they'd be a lot harder to control, wouldn't they? Okay, so to build this case for a hidden history, the source starts by painting this picture of a lost golden age. It describes a pre-colonial India that was incredibly powerful, super wealthy, and totally self-sufficient. And it kicks off with this massive number, 33%. The speaker claims that before the British showed up, India accounted for a full third of the entire world's GDP. I mean, just think about that. It would have made it one of the wealthiest nations on the planet. And this, right here, is the foundation of that prosperity the source says was just wiped from the history books.
So, you might be asking, how is that even possible? How do they achieve that kind of economic dominance? Well, the source points to something called the Gurukul system. It describes it as this indigenous education model that wasn't about just churning out workers. Not at all. It was about fostering independent thinkers, innovators, people with real self-respect.
And this is where it gets really interesting, because the source draws this incredibly sharp contrast. On one side, you have the Gurukul system, which it calls the engine of India's prosperity. And on the other, you have the Macaulay system, which the British brought in. The source doesn't just call it a new system, it calls it a weapon, designed to break the nation's spirit. The alleged goal? To create a workforce of clerks. Basically, to educate people just enough so they could serve the colonial machine, but never enough to actually question or challenge it.
All right, so after laying out this idea of a lost golden age, the source pivots to specific historical figures. And it starts with someone you'd probably never expect. One of the most revered humanitarian icons of the 20th century, Mother Teresa.
The source asks a really provocative question here. Was Mother Teresa's mission in India really about charity? It completely reframes her arrival, arguing it wasn't a simple act of compassion, but was actually part of a much larger, calculated, two-step strategy.
And this quote from the source really sums up its whole perspective. When there's wealth, they come to loot. When there's poverty, they come to spread religion. So the argument goes like this. Step 1, the British take all the wealth, leaving behind crushing poverty. Step 2, once the country is on its knees, missionaries are sent in, and their goal, according to this view, wasn't to help, it was to convert.
Now, to support such a controversial take, you need some pretty strong evidence, right? Well, the speaker points to what they claim is an official report from India's Central Bureau of Investigation, the CBI. They hold this up as documented proof for some really, really serious allegations.
And when I say serious, I mean it. The source alleges that her mission was a front for a whole range of criminal activities. We're talking child and women trafficking, forced deathbed conversions, financial fraud, even claims of deliberately poor medical care, like reusing needles on AIDS patients. It's a shocking list. And the source argues that all of this was allowed to happen because the government at the time basically looked the other way.
Okay, from there, the source connects these ideas of foreign influence and hidden agendas directly to India's first and arguably most powerful political dynasty, the Nehru-Gandhi family.
The speaker lays out this timeline to make a pretty startling claim that the family's entire public identity was basically a political invention. It starts with Indira Gandhi, Nehru's daughter, marrying a man named Feroz Khan. The source alleges her name was changed for the marriage, and then, to gain political acceptance in a largely Hindu country, the family adopted the surname Gandhi.
The argument is that it had nothing to do with Mahatma Gandhi by relation, but everything to do with using his incredible popularity to, in the source's words, deceive Hindus. And to back this up, the source points to an anecdote from a book written by a close family associate. It claims that Indira Gandhi once referred to Mughal tombs as the graves of my ancestors, presenting this as a kind of private admission that her real loyalties were very different from her public image.
And that brings us to the final piece of the puzzle, where the source makes its most direct and, frankly, most shocking reversal of mainstream history. It completely reevaluates two of the most iconic figures in modern India, Mahatma Gandhi and the man who assassinated him, Nathuram Godse.
I mean, look at this. It's a complete inversion of everything we're taught. The source portrays Godse not as some fanatic assassin, but as a patriot, someone who fought for freedom and acted to protect what he called the Hindu race. On the flip side, it casts Gandhi as someone who enabled the partition of India and betrayed Hindus. It even goes so far as to suggest that his death was actually a huge political benefit for Nehru's rise to power.
So if Gandhi is the villain in this narrative, who's the hero? Well, the source then shifts to the person it presents as the true but forgotten hero of independence, Subhash Chandra Bose. The argument is that he was the real freedom fighter, but he was sidelined, intentionally pushed out by Gandhi and Nehru.
And this is where the historical revision gets really wild. The source presents this unsolved puzzle of Subhash Chandra Bose. It claims he was the first to declare independence and was forced out of Congress for it. But here's the bombshell. It says he didn't die in that plane crash. Instead, he supposedly lived in India for decades, disguised as a sage named Gumnami Baba. And the source claims there's even proof, handwriting analysis that supposedly confirmed his identity, suggesting his legacy was intentionally erased.
So it all comes down to this one quote. Connect the dots and you will understand the conspiracy behind it. This pretty much captures the entire perspective of the source. It's asking you to believe that these aren't just a bunch of random, disconnected events. Instead, they're all pieces of a single, massive conspiracy, a hidden agenda to shape the nation's future by rewriting its past.
So this source presents a really provocative version of the past, and it leaves us with a big question. Who gets to write history? Now, the main takeaway here isn't about deciding if these claims are true or false. It's about understanding that this powerful counter-narrative exists. It really pushes us to think critically about how historical stories are told, who benefits from them, and, what parts might be getting left on the cutting room floor.